Chemical elements and their discovery. Where these discoveries took place. How the discovery of 118 chemical elements evolved historically and geographically. In this video, I'll give answer to these questions followed by a detailed example. Let's have it. Hello everyone, my name is Majid and welcome to Topics Basics. In previous video, I have talked about the story of periodic table and how the periodicity of element was developed. Let's stay in periodic table and see how the discovery of chemical elements was evolved. Just a step back here, I start with the definition. What is an element? You may know the ancient story of 4 elements when scientists like Aristotle thought we have only 4 elements: air, fire, earth and water. This hypothesis was cornerstone for almost 2000 years until 17th century that Boyle started arguing against it. He proposed we have many elements, not only 4. And a century later, Lavoisier said an element is a substance that cannot be broken into simpler substances. He conducted many analytical experiments in 1770s, and he proved that water is composed of definite proportion of oxygen and hydrogen. These studies helped him to publish his compositional theory in 1790, where he offers an analytical conception of what is it to be an element. This conception is very close to Boyle's hypothesis. To be an element is to be the last point of a chemical analysis. Chemical scientists were mostly alchemists until 17th century. They were trying to change one material or element to another one. The most well-known example is that they were trying to make gold out of ordinary stuff. But let's break it to 2 parts here. First, changing one material to another one. Well, this is something that scientists still are trying, and a straightforward strategy is that to know the chemical formula of a starting material and chemical formula of desired material and look for a reaction that possibly does the job. Secondly, to change an element to another one.
Just forget about it.
But it might be true for some elements. Nowadays we know that it's possible to make artificial elements. Scientists did that through extreme conditions by electron bombardment or radioactive reactions. But none of these were tried by alchemists for sure. But making new elements is something that alchemists dreamed about, started it, and now it's a reality. So let's not forget about it. Okay, now we know what is an element, and let's continue with their discovery. Some elements have been known since many years, and their discovery are not well documented. For example, copper, iron, lead, etc. We learned from previous video, by the time that Mendeleev discovered periodicity in 1869, there were more than 60 known elements. So, the elements were discovered randomly and their properties were reported. But the procedure for discovery of elements. Most of scientists were starting with a mineral. They were doing different things to them and saw what happens. Some were putting them on fire and checked the remaining ashes. Some were looking at the light that was coming out of it during burning process. Some others were using electricity by applying a high voltage and checking the current that was coming out of it. For example, in the beginning of 1800, Davy discovered several elements by using electricity. The time period of elemental discoveries goes back to 6500 before Christ, when copper is reported to be around. And the recent elemental discoveries were reported on 28th of November 2016, when IUPAC, International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, approved the name and symbols of 4 new elements of periodic table: nihonium, moscovium, tennessine, and oganesson. As an example, I can mention naming of these recent elements that have been named after a geographic region or a scientist. The scientist chose the name of these elements like this: oganesson for honoring Yuri Oganessian. Nihonium originated from Nihon, meaning Japan in Japanese. Moscovium and tennessine obviously originated and dedicated to Moscow and Tennessee. A traditional way of honoring geographic region. Speaking of geographic region, let's look at the countries that contributed to the discovery of elements. This makes more sense when you hear the name of the elements like francium, germanium, or the later cases like californium. On the list, you see the name of many countries, but if you zoom in, you will find United Kingdom with the highest number of contribution, and Italy, Romania, and Finland with only one. Here is how periodic table of elements look like by their country of origin. In regard to the example that I talked about in the beginning of the video, I want you to look at Sweden. Sweden, with a strong scientific culture, especially chemistry, has a significant contribution to the discovery of elements. Have a look, here are those elements, and now I will follow the discussion with my example. This discussion brings us here to this place, Ytterby Gruva. Swedish mine, close obviously nowadays, located in Ytterby, 30 km north of Stockholm. It was historically and originally open to make feldspar, a mineral with the application in porcelain industry. But its history twisted, and centuries later, this place is famous because of its gift to the discovery of elements. Here is the story of discovery. Late 18th century, Johann Gadolin received a piece of black stone from his friend Carl Arrhenius. The stone was taken from this place, probably from one of these rocks, and was mysteriously black. He studied the stone in his lab, and years later, in 1794, he published his results. Just a quick emphasis on the timing here in correlation with the other circumstances in chemistry community. This is 1794, there is no periodic table yet, and just 4 years after Lavoisier's compositional theory and his new definition of elements. Now we go to library. Well, to get a better feeling and give you a proper explanation about Gadolin research and his results, I booked a reading room here in National Library of Sweden, where I get access to Gadolin publication. After all, I'm a researcher, so let's go in. I got proper assistance and instructions on how to carefully handle this precious book. And this is what I was looking for, Gadolin original paper. The structure of the paper and how it is written is very similar to current scientific publications. Introduction, experiments, and results. As a part of his results, he gave these exact compositional analysis for the stone and proved that 38% of it is an unknown element. The element was later named yttrium. The black stone was named gadolinite, courtesy of Gadolin, and it was the starting point for a set of research that continued for many years after Gadolin and ended up to the discovery of several elements. 4 of those elements are named after this place: ytterbium, yttrium, erbium, and terbium. But another interesting point that connects this Swedish town to periodic table is that Ytterby has literally some streets named after the elements. This is real. Just see these footage of driving through these streets. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.